Shootings are still going down, which I see, which is great for us, because that's where people get hurt.
Thank you, Chief Stewart.
You're welcome. Yes, ma'am.
There was a concern in our community because in the month of January, there was a man right here in Ridgeview Park, who was acting erratically, and I know that we want to neighbors complained about him in person. We went to Charles with this, and early February, we walked over or talked to Ridgeview Court, and to pose an officer and ask at your house, and this was sort of why we unfortunately had it at your house. So my concern is, when I look up this expedited registry list, which is the easiest way that I can look up people who might have felonies, this guy had several felonies and just got out of prison for 15 years, less than a year prior to doing this. How do we know if the people walking around our streets or sitting on our playgrounds are violent felons? Like did they get stopped and asked or checked their IDs? Like Edward the murderer was sitting here in his playground during the month of January.
So the officers are, I'll say, is very, very proactive, but I will say this too, people have to call. And I just met with Catalina, we did just last night, and I met with them before that. So the big thing for me is, that's why I keep saying, anybody suspicious, call. One of the things that came out of that was people in the neighborhood were like, oh, I saw him all the time, they're right up and down the street on scooter, we see him all the time. Okay, and it turned out, that he did what he did. But people had seen him like walk behind houses and things like that. That is suspicious activity. Call, because it gets us there. And I will say this, the more we engage somebody, whether they're doing something wrong or not, because to be honest, like 50% of the time, they may be like, oh, my mom lives there, I lost my key, I'm going around in the back, you've never seen them before because they're out of town or something like that. There may be legitimate reasons to a lot of it, but let us determine that. Let us get out there and talk to them, because there's somebody who doesn't belong. We talk to them 2 or 3 times, maybe they're not doing anything wrong, but if I talk to you 2 or 3 times, you're not gonna come back to that neighborhood. You're gonna go somewhere where you're not gonna be bothered. So give us a chance to interact with people, and maybe they do have a warrant, or we know that they're there, they need to be monitored, they're on probation, and we're like, well, why are you over here? You're supposed to be somewhere else. And we can contact the probation officer and do all those kind of things. So that's why I'm just really big on, make sure you call. You're not always gonna be right, and I know people sometimes worry about, maybe he's not doing anything. Well, maybe he is doing something, or she is doing something. So call us and get an officer there, so we can at least engage them, talk to them, and see what's going on. And I will also say, as far as that goes, be very careful about opening doors. I know the one thing that we have here, we have cameras back here. If you don't have a doorbell camera, we will give you a doorbell camera. We'll actually come out and install it. Some people don't like a police officer sitting there in uniform installing it. They'll come in plain clothes. They'll come in plain clothes and put your doorbell camera up. So please take advantage of that. It's free. Now, I will say it's probably blink and not ring, not the big funny one, but it's free and it works. So, we'll get it there and we'll come install it for you. Even I had a hard time putting mine in myself. But yeah, we'll come out there and install it for you, because we want everybody to be safe. And we'll also do an assessment of your property. If you want an officer to come out there and look at your property and say, hey, this is why you're having issues. Your backyard's overgrown, you have no lighting. Our officers from our community involvement division will come out to your house and assess your house and tell you, hey, here's where I have a problem. Maybe you're having people sleeping on your property. Maybe you've got some things that disappear, like your bike's walked away a bunch of times. They can tell you why it's happening. Maybe put a motion floodlight right here, you wouldn't have those problems. Or, put a little camera right here, this will help you. So those are the kind of things we offer, and they're also on the app. You'll see all the ways to get that done on the app. But we have free cameras, we will come and install them. I can't stress that enough. We want to keep you all safe. Yes, ma'am.
So piggybacking off of what this gentleman said in your answer to it about crime and percentages going up when, people are brought into the area or something. You said burglary, robberies, stabbing, violent crime. 300 beds full of homeless people who have mental issues, who have drug addiction. You know the crime in this area is going to go up
300 beds.
for the homeless shelter.
Oh, okay, you lost it. Okay, that's pretty much. So I will say this. As a police department, we have a homeless unit. So we have a homeless unit that works from 7 to 5. Then we have another group of homeless officers that come in from 6 to 9. Then we have another group of homeless officers that come in from 9 to 3. A lot is based on the new law, but also it's complaint driven. So we get a lot of calls about homeless being on somebody's property or homeless being somewhere where they're not supposed to be because the law did change. And our biggest job is to move along. We stopped 980 people last week. We arrested 15. Because we all know that basically for us, arresting is not what we want to do. We give them options. Here's the place you can go, here's the place you can go, here's the place you can go. It's nice for the Atlanta Police Department to have somewhere to send them, but that's pretty much all I have on that one. I'm not a part of a lot of the bigger things that are going on with that. But for us, we're trying to keep the community safe. So sometimes we end up making an arrest for that. But a lot of times we're just like, hey, you can't be here, you're trespassing this person's property, move along. And it's very helpful for us because a lot of times we found that civilians don't have the same impact an officer has, because in the end, an officer can be like, hey, you gotta get off this person's property, you have to go. If you're not gonna go there, unfortunately, you're gonna end up going to jail. And sometimes in a very small percent, they do end up going to jail with us. So that's how we saw it. So the only other option we have is having somewhere to take them, and we don't have anywhere to take them. I mean, and that's just the way that piece of the puzzle is. That's police chief, that's all I really focus on. Just give me the options of what I need to do with the people. You know, we'll keep moving them along, but that's my only option is move them along or jail. I don't have any other options. That's as much as I know about that, unfortunately. So sorry to answer your question a little bit better. Yes, ma'am.
So, I'm not totally sure, but I've heard that this is going to be an open access shelter and that it will service Orange, Osceola, and Seminole counties. So does do the police departments in those other two counties, if they don't have a place to send their homeless people, they'll bring them to this open access shelter?
I'm not aware of any of that, but I'm also not a part of the conversation as far as it goes. That I just know in the end, we want somewhere to take them, and that's all I know as far as the police department goes. As far as the little things that are set up and how it's set up and how it's going to be managed, run, where it's going to be, and all that, that's not a part of the police department.
Where do you take them now?
So right now we take them. There's no option. So in extreme cases, I have a couple shelters I can take them to, but it's very, very extreme cases. The one thing I never want to see, and some officers this, I never want to see a person with 3 little kids sitting in a lake. I'm not going to have that. If you got 2 little children with you, I have emergency places I can take them to, and that's what I focus on. Everybody else, unfortunately, I'm sorry, you can't be on this person's property, you can't be on the public property. Once we get a complaint, you have to move along, and that's what we do. And hopefully in probably 90+% of the cases, they move along, because most people don't want to get arrested by us. But in those cases where they don't, especially if you're trespassing on somebody's property, we have to make the arrest. I can't sit here all day and just let you sit on a private person's porch and let you be there. That's somebody's property. Sorry, it just doesn't work like that. And unfortunately, you may have to go to jail. We handle that. Yes, sir.
Of the 980 last week, how many had kids with them?
I don't think we rarely come across little kids, but that's our focus. That's in the police department. That's my big thing is like, if you're sitting here at a lake all night with little kids, because we have children and families, we have options of places that will help them. Because as you know, people that are parents in this room, you just can't have your person out there with no means or anything like that. We take the steps we have to help people in those cases, but that's for those rare cases. Go ahead. Yes, sir.
With the homeless population that you are approaching now, what percentage are refusing to go to a homeless shelter that is available?
So I only know the rest we make. We just have to move along. So we give them, so our goal, we give them options. We give them like, here's some paperwork, somewhere you can get help, you can get food, all the, the normal right to life kind of things. Here's your options, but you have to go. Now they move along. Do they go to the shelter? No, we don't know. Where do they go? No, as long as we fix the situation, that's our job, to fix the situation for the moment, get them off your property, get them moving along, and then we go on to the next issue.
You keep saying move along. So if I call you and there's suspicious activity and it's a homeless person, are you going to investigate that person or are you going to have them move along?
So we investigate every situation. So that's where most of the arrests come from. So if you imagine, so we stopped about 980 people. We arrested, I think it was 18. We arrested 18. A lot of those are warrants because we run everybody and we check everybody. Then we have drugs and weapons. So you get arrested for that. So we search you. We do all the things that a regular police officer would do when you contact somebody. So yeah, and then the biggest thing a lot of times is warrants. They may have a warrant for something. Even if it's minor, we have to take it for a warrant. There's no ifs, ands, or buts on a warrant. And then sometimes it's something like alcohol or panhandling, which is a very, very smaller number, but you can't beg from a roadway in the city. It's just not allowed. We get multiple warnings, so we come back around the block and you're still there, and it's not gonna, you have to go. Yes, sir.
You keep saying move along. To where do you expect these homeless people to move along to? What are your expectations and follow-up to that?
So as a police department, our expectation is to solve the issue, to solve the problem basically almost as quickly as we can because we have other calls for service. So as a police department, we move. If you respond, I come to your house for trespass. There's somebody on your porch. You don't want them on your porch. They are trespassing. When we come there, sir, you need to leave this person's porch. okay, I'll leave this person's porch, and they move along, that handles the situation. But we do also, we run them, on teletype, make sure they're not a wanted person. We will, if it gets to the point we see something we need to search them, then we'll search them for that. And then, yes, if they respond to us and they start moving, then that meets the criteria of what we want to do. Now, we sit there and just follow them along and see where they go? No, because somebody walking along, that can take hours to see where they're actually going to go. So no, a lot of them move along and they go to different places. Some of them may take the flyer that we give them and go to some of the services that are offered. Some will go to some of the places or churches that offer meals. That's fine with it, but I have nowhere to take them. Like, there's not an option B for me. I can't just say, well, you don't leave this person's property. I have an option of somewhere to take you. I don't have that option. So it's basically, if you don't do what we say and we can't solve the situation, you're gonna get a bus.
It just seems to me that the neighborhood is still in harm's way. You ask them to move along, but they're gonna be repeat offenders over and over again. And they're just gonna move along deeper into the neighborhood, into hiding spots, into businesses, back alleys, etc. That just doesn't, I wouldn't leave here, you saying that, feeling any safer by asking them to move along.
So, I have no other options. Unfortunately, we solve the situation just like we come to the house for domestic, we solve the situation. We come to the house for overbirth, we solve the situation. There just isn't, there's nowhere I can take them to and say, hey, get in the car, I'm gonna drive you 20 miles away to wherever. It just doesn't exist. So for most of our calls, it's, sir, you're trespassing on this person's property, can you please move along? Yes, I will, and they'll get their things and they'll move along. So for the most part, that's how it's handled at this point. Yes, ma'am.
Chief Smith, can you speak to, of the most recent stops that you've been making, what areas of town those have been in? You broke down overall crime by the city versus individual districts, and can you speak to that distribution?
As far as you mean?
So where your homeless units are being deployed and
So you say
for District 4, for the
most of
980 for last week that you mentioned, can you give a sense of where those folks are all over the city, distribution by district?
So the homeless unit responds all over the city, but I'll say most of the time, they spend most of their time in what we call Central Division, which is Paramore, downtown area, because that's where most of them are, so that's where most of the calls for service are generated in that area, but they do go as far as Lake Nona, up to Rosemont, College Park, so they do hit the whole city. It's based on where the calls are, and it frees up other officers. So if they're the ones taking time if they're gonna dispatch regular patrol officers to homeless calls, then that takes them out of service for the domestics, for the shootings, for all that kind of stuff. So the homeless unit will respond to those calls wherever they are in the city, and they'll take care of those kind of calls. And they're also better trained with it and better, they also have a mental health person with them that patrols with them, and sometimes there's other organizations they can refer them to.
And as a follow-up, can you also speak to how it is that you all assign resources based on calls? There are a lot of new faces in this room who don't typically attend these meetings and probably haven't heard you go through how that is typically done.
So calls for service are generated from the complaints from the community. So let's say you have a neighborhood right here and they never ever call the police. So what happens to the officers who are assigned in that area, they start getting pulled out more and more to go to other areas that are busier and have a lot more issues, because people are calling. So the old adage, it's a squeaky wheel gets the grease and gets the wheel, it's true. So if you're complaining and saying, hey, we're having a lot of suspicious people, when we sit down and we're like, hey, where are the issues at? That's how we distribute our officers. So the more you call for any issues you have, the more officers that will be inside of what I call the box in your area to respond to those calls. If the district next to you has a whole lot of things going on, those officers start pulling out the help, pulling out the help, pulling out the help. They'll still come back if a call goes out, but you really want them patrolling your neighborhoods and staying in your neighborhoods and saying, hey, no, we have a burglary issue in this neighborhood right here. So these officers are gonna stay in this area. We have a special detail to keep them in this area because we're having issues. And then all the extra officers I have, which are, 40 TAC officers, about 40 drug officers, they go and they start working those areas too, because those are the areas that have what we call whatever the issues are, and they go in those areas. So that's why I'm always trying to stress, always call, because it generates the calls for service, and we see that and say, hey, this neighborhood's have some issues. Let's put some more resources in there to help.
And 911 versus non-emergency.
911 versus non-emergency all the time, because think about it this way. Whatever you're calling about is an emergency. It's an emergency to you. A suspicious person in your neighbor's house is an emergency. The non-emergency number is a lot of times for some, hey, how do I get in touch with code enforcement? How do I get in touch with that? They deal with that. So the same operator is going to look at that one, and they're going to keep answering 911, 911, 911, and that one at some point will go to a machine. Or they'll answer it a little bit later. And you may have a real concern, so always, always, always call 911.
To your right, gentleman, had his hand up a long time.
Thank you. Without taking a political position on the homeless shelter, my question is, in your experience, bringing 300 people, homeless folks, unfortunately homeless, into a small, close-knit community, is that going to increase crime?
So what I'll say to that is, it's nice for the Orlando Police Department to have somewhere to take people. So I mean, that's what I'll say to that one. It's
I
nice for us to have.
appreciate that, but in your experience.
In my experience, it's nice for the Orlando Police Department to have somewhere to take people who are in need.
But for the city.
Mac?
So you keep saying the biggest problem is you get no place to take these individuals, right? And that's why this proposal for this area is being requested, correct?
Possibly. I'm just not the person who sits, I'm a police officer, so I'm not the
Yeah.
person who sits at the table for those kind of discussions.
Right.
But when it came to me and said, hey, when I was at, what are your options for where you take people? I either take,
None.
I really don't have any options to take people. So that's as far as the Orlando Police Department's input, it'd be nice to have somewhere to take people. Some of the other ones are very cross, so they just don't have the room for me, or they're just doing other things, so they don't have the room for me. It'd be nice for us to have another option, because as you heard here, I basically move you along or arrest you. There's really no, plan B for that.
What were the other discussions on other options?
It wasn't a part of me. I just basically submitted what
You
I
just provided your
put forward.
input based on that area?
Yeah, I just put in, here's what I need, here's what we do, here's my statistics,
Mm.
here's how many people we come in contact with, here's how many people we arrest, and we sort of just go from there. Here you go.
When you have a trespass, they're on somebody's porch, say, or whatever. Before you say move along, do you ask the homeowner, would you like to press charges for trespass against this person? Or
Yeah, as a homeowner, you have to say you want them removed. You can sit, now there's some businesses that say that they don't care
Under
for
a
them.
violation of the law, so trespassing is a violation of the law.
It's a violation, but you have to have a victim who wants to cooperate.
Right, do you inquire of that homeowner, would you like to press charges against this person who's on your?
Yeah, of course, because that's the only way we can ever make an arrest.
Okay.
If you basically said, there's a lot of businesses that let them stay there at night, and we have what's called rise and shine, where the officers will come in the morning, and they move people off of certain businesses before the employees get there.
And generally, these homeowners or whoever it happens to be, a business owner or whatever, they're like, no, I don't want to press charges.
Yeah,
Is
but
that
most,
how it usually goes?
yeah, but you gotta think of it this way. If you call the police, usually you want that person off of your property. So the first thing we do in a trespass is say, hey, you have to leave this property. And now it's trespass after warning if you refuse. So if you flat out say, I will not leave a property, that's where trespass after warning, and you could be subject to arrest. Yes, the person who lives there has to say, yes, I want this to happen. I want them trespassed off my property.
So is a record made of that initial trespass? In other words, if you've got someone and he's trespassed now for the third or fourth time, so he did the move along thing, but then he went and was found in somebody's garage, and you get called, do you have a record of that previous trespass?
Oh, yeah. So we actually
So
give
then
you a
at
trespass
what point-
warning and put it in, it's in the computer, so as soon as we go out to that address, I run your name, they say this person has an active trespass warning at this address and has been there X amount of time. So it's right there in the computer, we see it all the time. I will say in our history, most people don't. Once the police interact with you, you're probably not gonna go back to that place because you don't really want the police to interact with
Not
you
that
again.
place, but maybe
Yeah.
another. I guess what I'm asking is at what point, after they've had multiple trespasses, would they be arrested?
It depends on if they refuse. You have to refuse. Now, if you're trespassed after warning, you've already been given a piece of paper that says you can't be on that property, then it could be arrest, but I still need a homeowner to say, yes, I'm good with that arrest. I'm not, because some people say, I don't want it to go that far. Just can you please ask them to leave? So it's your option when we get there. A lot of people, if we do multiple trespasses there, then it may rise to
So
the
there's
point of arrest.
rarely a consequence for all this trespassing. They just kind of move along from one place to another.
I will say most of the time, people don't want to run into us again, just because of other things they do, because they don't want to be searched by us. They may, maybe they may have drugs or something on them like that. So they try and avoid us as much as possible. So what we usually see is we don't see the same places twice. Like if you get a person sleeping on your porch, that person's not going to be back there the next day sleeping on your porch because you've already proven you'll call the police on them. So that's, what I'm saying, they're not going to go back to that same spot. They may find somewhere else to be, and that's understandable, and that's understandable as far as that. We
Like a
deal with that in the new
revolving-
place.
Seems a bit of a
Yep.
revolving
Yep.
situation.
My name's Patty Martin.
Oh, sorry.
And I want you guys to meet me because of the fact that I was in law enforcement for 14 years. I recently retired. And I'm gonna step on your toes because all of you are doing a great job. I totally understand where everyone's at here. But the truth is, I used to work in a very highly populated homeless area, and I saw the struggles that all those residents went through. I saw what the police went through. I saw what I went through. There is very limited amount that we can do. And we all know this. I know this, I should say. So the fact that crime will go up, it will. The fact that homeless people can walk up and down your sidewalk in front of your house and we can tell them to move along and they can say, I don't want to, they can do that. There are so many things that I know and have seen, and I have compassion for them because I've gotten to know them and I've gotten to know their families, but rarely did I see them with little kids. I saw drug addiction. I saw drug dealers come because they knew the drug addiction was there. I saw families ruined because they are constantly calling the cops. And there's nothing really that we can do. And I remember that, and there was such frustration behind it that after a while you just had to say, I'm sorry guys, there's nothing we can do. Do you know how hard it is to say that to a neighborhood knowing that that could happen to ours? That's the truth. I know that you can't say certain things, but I'm speaking as a former law enforcement officer, 14 years. I'm speaking for what you probably can't say. Crime will go up. Drug addiction is there. Many of them.
Thank you for your transparency. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm not saying all, but many do not want the help. I have given them the cards. I have offered to take them places. I have arrested them. And they end up right back there because they know that's where they can get the help. There's no help. There's just, it's not there.
So,
And that's the truth, guys. That's
Thank
the
you.
truth.
Thank you for your clarity.
I will say, I understand your frustration, but again, I will get back to this point. I do 6 meetings throughout all of our districts, and to me, it's about crime for what's going on in your neighborhood. I voluntarily come in front of everybody here and I talk about what's going on in your neighborhood as far as crime and what we can do better and all those kind of things. And I understand there's another issue going on, and I totally understand that. But to be honest, I'm here to talk about what's going on in your community to make sure we're doing, as a police department, we're doing what it is to keep you all safe. So any more questions about that avenue?
Yeah, I got lost.
Sir, back here.
So what is OPD doing to work with Orlando Health? Because in our area, Orlando Health is dumping people onto the street, specifically between Kaley and Gore. You see them on a continual basis, especially early morning. They're dumped out, maybe they went to the emergency room and then they're dumped back out onto the street. Are you guys having conversations with Orlando Health? Because they should bear some responsibility.
Well, I will say that's the first I'm hearing about it. I'm glad you brought it up. That's why these meetings exist, bring up things like that. I have no idea of that one, but it's always something we'll have a conversation to see if that's actually going on. But I will say at this time, because there's so many of you and there's so many of us, we're gonna stop answering these formal questions. You can ask all these officers any questions. I'm gonna stand right here. You're welcome to me and ask me any question you want. I'm not leaving. This way all your questions are answered because this is a very, very large meeting. So thank you all for coming. There's food back there if you want it. There's cameras back there if you need it. But we're not going anywhere. So just come up to me and ask me to my face what the questions are. All the officers right here. We're all here. Thank you for coming.